to SPTV.
Welcome back to Degraded Daughters of Dianetics. I'm Vanessa. This is my co-host Elysia, and today we have an incredible guest with us, Miss Liz Gale.
Hey,
She's
Liz.
here with us. We're so excited to have Liz here chatting with us. Her family's story has impacted me in so many ways as a second gen who went to Delphi. Your brother was talked about all the time as a success story and somebody who went to Delphi, graduated, went to the prestigious colleges afterwards. He, was working at Earthlink. I do remember going to those Earthlink parties. It was a very specific time, and they just completely left out the part about his death. So he had already passed away by the time that I had heard all this information. So I didn't know till later. And it had a big impact on me because of the amount of second gen and finding out that they were even still using him kind of as a poster child. And his very deep, date of death stuck with me as a second gen. And so I've always been fascinated by following your story. You are doing so well on social media. You're like the queen of TikTok right now.
Mm-hmm. Killing it on TikTok.
Like 1 million views on your video. And you're the authority about Scientology, and I love that. And we were super inspired to start speaking because we saw you doing it too. I mean, there's things that we all want to say. We're really happy to have you, and I know that we share some similar experiences and perspectives, and both you and Elysia are moms.
Mm-hmm.
So do you mind telling the viewers a bit about your story?
Sure.
Yeah.
Everybody. I was born a third-generation Scientologist. So that means that my grandmother got my family in around 1955, which was the Dianetics era. So she really loved Dianetics when she found it and raised my mother completely by the book of Dianetics. And there was me and my brother in our home growing up. We both went to Delphi, Oregon, the boarding school, Scientology boarding school, at 8 years old. He was 4 years older than me. So he went at 8, and then later I went at 8. We both graduated high school at 14, though he graduated from Delphi, and I took I don't know if you've ever heard of Larry Dennison Academy. It was a Scientology sort of buy your diploma type situation.
Totally. Everybody used that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To like get a diploma. It was like he would like cram you for the GED, right?
Yeah. And then instead of getting a GED, you would get a diploma. So I went in there. My mom dropped me off And he was like, no 14-year-old is going to come in here and take this test and graduate. And I did. I took the test. And that day, I was in there for like maybe 6 hours. And then he printed out my diploma on one of those old school printers. It was like, we had to peel the edge off, the holes off the side.
I remember that.
But, it got me into community college later. And then I got my associates from community college in early childhood education. And
Oh
then,
my God.
yeah. And then I went on to Portland State University years later, and I got my bachelor's in child and family studies.
Whoop, whoop.
So,
Holy moly.
Yeah.
We love that.
Love
family,
that.
child development, human development. Growing up, I always knew that what I was taught was wrong. It just didn't make sense. And then after, my brother died, because I was 14, it really occurred to me that I cannot afford to make the same mistakes that were made. I have to figure out another way to look at children, to look at family. And I'm so glad that I did, because I'm a mom now. My oldest turns 17 this summer. My youngest turns 9 this summer. So being able to have concepts like age appropriateness for children, a lot of my brother's story, which we can get into, the expectations on him were just not appropriate for his age and his development level, and that had really dire consequences. So I really wanted to make sure that I had some idea what the hell I was doing. So, yeah. What else about me?
Didn't it anger you? Because for me, when I was learning about child development, because not everybody goes out of their way to learn about child development. It's not necessarily required in the world, right?
Right.
If you don't think it's important, you're not going to seek it out. I was exposed to it through just basic psychology courses, and then we had developmental psychology, and man, I started getting angry because this research is out there and they know what grows happy, healthy humans. And there's certain just basics that the outside world, I won't even say the slang for it because it's like a derogatory term, but the outside world did a lot better than us. And it makes me mad because my parents tried to apply child Dianetics so hard, but there were other manuals that they could have applied, right? So I'm just relieved to hear somebody has been through this similar thing, that we could talk about it, because it's infuriating once you understand age development appropriateness, and then the phases of development and what is so important, what's going to affect them for the rest of their lives, and that it was just done so wrongly.
Yeah.
And it had tragic consequences in your family, and that's just horrible.
Yeah, well, and not just my family. I think maybe you had a similar experience. By the time I got into early adulthood, I really wondered, why are so many second and third generation Scientologists? It seemed to me that I knew way too many people who had either attempted or had actually succeeded in ending their own lives. And of course, now I understand that the very high, but at the time, it was a big part of my cognitive dissonance, because I was told my whole life, this is how you raise happy children, through these Scientology rules and child Dianetics. I mean, my parents gave me a copy of child Dianetics when I got pregnant, like still trying to push this. And at that point, I already had a lot of education, and I don't know, it was just, it created a lot of cognitive dissonance for me, that like, how can you keep pushing this? How can you keep saying that this works when, my brother has passed, so many people have ended their own lives? It just, I don't know. It's like the definition of insanity, like keep trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's like, what do you expect to happen?
Right.
So
Right.
it was important to me to try and figure out a different way, and also to make sense of kind of my own childhood, because you feel like something's not right here. But unless you get more information, for me, I'm an information seeker. That's been a huge part of my healing, a huge part of my sort of deprogramming, is to try to figure out what the hell happened to me?
So you brought up the child Dianetics and how that was gifted to you. And your parents still gave that to you even after you went out of your way to do actual like public schooling and college.
Right.
Did they get upset that you went to do that and like got educated, or did it like sit okay with them that you did that?
Well, yes and no. Because I had graduated high school at 14, I went to community college. The law in Oregon apparently was I had to be in some kind of school until I was 16. So I moved into community college dorms at 15. And I actually did not do well in classes, but I got exposed to, some different stuff and realized that early childhood was going to be my passion. My parents weren't thrilled about all the psychology classes.
That's what I was going to.
Yeah,
Right.
with
Mine
that
either.
degree.
Yeah.
So
They're
I
like,
think
can't you get into nursing? Like, that would be okay.
right. Well, and I think almost every degree, really, I mean, sociology or psychology, some sort of, social sciences is required for any type of bachelor's of science. The biggest amount of flack that I got was in between my associates and my bachelor's. I graduated with my associates, my 2-year degree at 19, and then I joined staff at Portland CC, Portland Celebrity Center. And I lasted for about 6 months. I did not enjoy it. I was the public executive secretary. So my job was to do the personality tests with people, to find their ruin, and to sell them introductory courses. This was also the era when everybody had to watch the orientation film, right? And it was such a controversial film because there's that scene where the guy goes, you could walk out of here and what does he say? You could jump off a bridge.
Jump off a bridge, yeah.
Yeah. And that would be stupid, and you could reject Scientology, but that would be stupid.
Yeah.
And so
that's like the last line too. Like it really sticks with you. Like,
it does.
or you could just jump off a bridge. Wait,
Yeah.
like does he say that he's got a gun, or is that just my memory? Because
It's how you use it that counts. For you are the one that counts. If you leave this room after seeing this film and walk out and never mention Scientology again, you are perfectly free to do so. It would be stupid, but you can do it. You can also dive off a bridge or blow your brains out. That is your choice. But if you don't walk out that way, if you continue with Scientology, we will be very happy with you. And you will be very happy with you.
Because I swear he was like, "Oh, you gotta just shoot yourself in the head." Like it was that ridiculous of an impact on my brain at the time.
Yeah, it was, and it was insulting. Like it was condescending, and it was, especially for an organization that's obsessed with tone levels and emotion and how you present yourself. So I was having to deal with those people coming out. So I also was, college age, and at that time, the Celebrity Center was only like 6 blocks away from Portland State University. So I had what I considered a lot of my peers to be coming in. And it was really hard for me to, to ruin them. That's just not, and it's not really my thing. I was always more of the like, hey, like this Scientology, it might help you. It might not. Like you could try it. And that's not a hard enough sell approach, especially to get paid enough to eat food. So, and all those legal documents, that you have to sign, even for an introductory course, was like 17 lines of initialing, saying very bizarre things like, if you're ever in a mental health facility, Scientology will bust you out. It's like, this is a person who's never taken a Scientology class before. They have no idea, and they're not comfortable signing away their First Amendment rights, all these things. So yeah, I did not last very long. I lasted about 6 months. I also didn't really make enough money to survive. So there were a lot of factors. And I had decided at that time, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go back and get my bachelor's degree. I'm going to keep working on my life, trying to get better. And that's when I got the most amount of flack. I got told things like, you don't have to go to college. L. Ron Hubbard studied everything under the sun.
Mhm.
All you need to do is study his works and you'll be fine. I had actually, in between then too, I had gone on a little backpacking trip through Europe, and that opened my eyes to a whole bunch of other things. And I really wanted to travel more. And I expressed like, I want to travel, I want to learn. And I just got a lot of feedback of like, you don't have to do that. Stay here. L. Ron Hubbard did all that already. And all you have to do is sit in this room and learn all of his works. And I didn't really buy that. I had been 1 foot out too long. I had gotten my a taste for the world. I'd gotten a taste for education, like non-Scientology education, and I wanted more. So they couldn't stop me. Of course, when I left, I was given a freeloader bill for $4,000. So I had worked 19 years old. I had worked full time as well as another job. I never really made enough to make ends meet. I had a wonderful diet of mac and cheese and ramen, and I just knew that there had to be something more for me. So that was about the time that I really decided Scientology wasn't for me. And then around 23, I moved out to my family's property. It was a really big property, and I lived a mile away from my parents' home. And when I say parents, I'm talking about my mom and my stepdad. And that was really new to me because I had not lived in the same town as my mother since I was like 15. And before that, it had only been for maybe consolidated since I was 8 years old, maybe a year's worth of time. So I worked really hard to establish a relationship with her, to kind of keep my mouth shut about the stuff that would cause us problems. And that worked for quite a while. But as my son started getting older, I started getting nervous for him. My parents told my husband, my now husband, and I the day they met him, which of course they met him when I was already pregnant. And I would imagine that's very challenging and hard for a parent. But my stepdad said, your child will be a Scientologist, whether you like it or not. And that never went away. When my first son was born, my mom was in there. She like shushed my husband in the delivery room. And
Oh my God.
yeah. And so I felt good about early childhood. I felt like I've got this. But as he started to get a little bit older, I don't know how to explain it. I just know like 8 is the age that is set in Dianetics to start getting like to really dig in and get like handle your case, get into Scientology.
Yeah, because you're so mature at 8,
Right. Right. And right around that time, there was, I don't know, it just didn't feel safe to me. It didn't feel safe. And I felt like if I continue to stay under the radar, I'm sending a message and I'm leaving a door open that is just not worth it. The other thing is that my son is also very smart. He, I'm not going to sit here and say like he's a genius or anything, but he was asked to skip grades early on, which I very much declined. And I advocated for him remaining with his peer group and accessing a higher level academics in his class or in his school while maintaining his peer group. That was really important to me.
That's so profound, Liz.
Yeah. It is weirdly cathartic. I don't want to put all this pressure on him. Like he is who he is and he can make mistakes and he can turn out however he's going to turn out. But it is really lovely to have someone entrusted in your care that you can say I'm really working hard to do a better job than maybe not better, but to do something different.
Yeah. And that's nice that you actually could see that, because as a parent, that's been a concern I've always had, is like, I don't want my kids around Scientology. Going to certain people's houses was always kind of a no-go for me because it's just Scientology books everywhere. Mm-hmm. And kids would be like, what's that? And I'm like, nothing that you ever need to know about. like just nothing. And so that's been kind of one of my unspoken rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't leave my kids alone with certain people because I just don't trust, like you said, I just don't trust the kind of things that would come out of their mouth and how that's going to impact a kid that has no clue what that is.
Right.
You've been through it. I've been through it. So we could understand as an adult now that that impacted us in a very, very big and deep way. And we don't want that for our kids. So
No.
I commend you for putting your foot down and for, you know, really just being an advocate for your kids, because that's sometimes really hard to do in family dynamics, because then you're probably made to be the bad person, which has always been me.
Yeah. I'm definitely I'm the bad person in my family, which is really kind of sad. And I hope maybe one day as like the kids kind of grow up and see Scientology for what it is.
Mhm.
We also had some other stuff happen in my family. Some of my other family members that was covered up, and I couldn't stop that from happening, you know. And I risked myself by becoming vocal, and you know, when it just came to my own kids, I have a zero tolerance for it. Yeah. And the thing that's strange though is I do believe in freedom of religion. You know, we have a lot of different belief systems within my husband's family. He's got a big family, and it's not that I don't want people to share what they believe. I think that's beautiful. You know, if somebody like a grandparent wants to talk to them about, you know, church or whatever, it's just that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that in my family, in my circumstance, they really wanted, despite me, they wanted my kids to be in Scientology. And that like that fanatical, like we're right no matter what, we will do this no matter what. That's dangerous to me. It's one thing to have an open conversation about what people believe and respecting beliefs of others and sharing what works for people. That's all fine. But the kind of low-key, secretive, like your mom doesn't know what she's talking about. This is the one true way. You have to have a lot of trust, I think, in somebody to be able to give that kind of access to your child. And frankly, my parents didn't earn that trust.
That's so strong of you, because I watched my brothers struggle with this with their children. My brothers were not, like, their father fought for them to kind of not go to Scientology schools. We have different fathers.
Okay.
And then they had children. One of them had children pretty young, and I watched. It was really upsetting, and they didn't know how to deal with it, with our mom coming in and trying to do study tech and teach the kids these little, like, she would just sneak it in and I would see it. Sometimes my brothers wouldn't even see it, but it's really hard, and nobody wants to be the bad guy, but I really applaud your effort, because it's so important that you saw that things needed to be done differently and you put your foot down. And it's ironic that they raise, like, I don't know if it's a Delphi kid thing. I don't think so. I think it's a Scientology kid thing because Alicia's here. But they raise us to have real fucking integrity. Real integrity.
know.
And we stand by that. Like, I'm
Definitely.
very strong about certain things, and it sounded like you are too from listening to you talk, and Alicia is as well. When we put our foot down, and they taught us that. And so in some ways they create their own worst enemies.
I always thought that was so strange. Why put all this attention on integrity when you actually just want us to shut up and get along? Like, why did you do that? So silly.
It's like confused. It's just another of the confusing contradictions. But that one they kind of hammered home. So I never because like I didn't ever understand that we have major integrity, and so does everybody who speaks out and does things differently.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's beautiful that you've done that. And how was your development affected by not only being sent to a boarding school, but having a death in your family of your brother? your sibling that wasn't processed in a healthy way. Like, because I know every time somebody died around me, I was in session.
Yep.
And that's not the healthiest way, as we know now. So how do you think that's affected, or how did it affect you at the time?
Yeah. Ironically, when I have my parents were very traditional in some regards. Like up until I went to boarding school, my mom had dinner on the dinner table every day, 5 or 6 o'clock. And while my brother wasn't there a lot because he was at boarding school, we we had dinners together. We went to Disney World. We had a lot of really fun. I have a lot of really fun type memories. And then going to boarding school, I was devastated. I mean, I really fell apart. I was too young. I did not have the emotional coping skills. I did not have the life skills. Um, it was really, really young for me. And my brother had been sent there very specifically to protect him because, as I talked about in the past, he broke his arm when he was 4. And my mother told me that he went into surgery, and when he came out, he was, quote, different. And she realized that, like, he was throwing tantrums. He just wasn't himself after that. And they were really close. I mean, she really, really loved him, especially during that early childhood time. And I don't know where she got the idea, but apparently she realized that she was restimulating him. Just her as a mother was restimulating, triggering him into these negative behaviors. And so that was part of why he was sent to Delphi, was because to save him from getting triggered by her. And in all my research that I've done, this is a huge part of Dianetics, which especially the early versions of Dianetics, which was how my mother was raised. L. Ron Hubbard was he did not like women. He not only was married multiple times, with several of his ex-wives accusing him of abuse, torture, neglect, bigamy, kidnapping one of their children, but that text alone seems to really come down on mothers. It gives mothers this strange, exorbitant amount of power in saying that if you say the wrong thing, if you bump into something when you're pregnant, if you have sex when you're pregnant, if you have an argument, all of these things will ruin your child. He uses words like psychosis, sending them to the loony bin. So on one hand, he's really putting a lot of power in mothers, which I do believe mothers have a lot of power over the health and development of their children, especially in a vulnerable time like pregnancy. But the idea that if you bump your stomach one time, now your child is doomed and you need to send them away from you is ridiculous. And in my mother's case,
It's ludicrous. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah.
And it's putting responsibility. It's not like empowering. It's like he's like dumping this all on the mother, and it's all fake. So they're worrying about it the entire pregnancy.
Yeah, the entire time. And that's part of why, the silent birth of Scientology is silent birth. This idea that as a human female with vocal cords, that you cannot speak or scream or grunt when you are giving birth is ridiculous, especially when sound can actually be healing. Sound can actually help us through things. So I kind of understood where the idea came from. Knowing what I know now, it's very age appropriate for a 4-year-old to have a tantrum. It's probably weird that he didn't before then, especially after a traumatic incident like a surgery or an injury. Not to mention, he probably was in pain. So there's a lot of things that I felt like were deliberate breaking of the mother-child bond, which in a coercive setting, obviously you have to do that. You have to break that bond early because that's how you gain power over the children. That's how you get the mother to give up her child. Like if you're in the C organization, to just say, oh, somebody else can raise my child. What I'm doing is so much more important.
And how hard must that be for the moms? I mean, God,
Yeah.
the woman working who has to make that choice that saving the world is more important. How horrible.
I know. Well, in that perspective of like, well, what's one child? You've lived a million lifetimes and had a million kids. So what's this one daughter or this one son?
And disconnecting this lifetime is not even that big of a deal because you'll have
Right.
many, many others, right?
Exactly. And the earlier you do that, for one, the child becomes completely dependent on the church or organizations, created by the church, or you have a mom or a parent, I guess I should say, who is able to flip that switch and put all of their attention back on the cause. I lived a pretty privileged, I'd say, Scientology upbringing. I did not join the C organization. I went to, Delphi. Growing up, I had a lot of nannies. My mom in particular was doing her OT levels around my early childhood. Like we moved to Clearwater when I was 4. And then from there, she was off at the Free Winds regularly. So I'd say she was a professional Scientologist. That was like her thing. And clearly it was more important because that's what happened.
They make choices because they think that it's the best choice and they're doing what they think is going to be the most loving in the long term.
Right.
But what you said about L. Ron Hubbard creating a narrative for parents, I'm reminded of someone who's a second gen who heard a woman who we all know say when her child was 2 years old, she said she read a reference on course and then looked up and said to my friend, I think my child's an SP. And that was when the child was 2 years old.
Right.
So how incredible would it have been if they were reading a child development book instead of this bullshit manual of crap that makes you literally, it provides the conditions for death by suicide. And it's really, really sad. And a lot of people suffer with all sorts of mental illnesses because our parents were sold this lie, right?
Yeah. And that sense of early childhood education, you're talking about a 2-year-old, to receive feedback like that, the concept that, because if you're talking about an SP, you are, like you guys know, degraded. You are, it's not that you're making bad choices, it's that you are bad. And there's a really big difference.
Yeah.
There's no room for changing. Yeah. There's no room.
Yeah.
And once you get those, I think that sense of identity really early on, it's so incredibly hard to shake it. Sometimes you don't even, it's hard to even figure out where it's coming from because it's hard to, even know what happened to you during those times. So I don't know. I feel like I was privileged in some regards because, I mean, bless her heart, at least she took the brunt of it. It was never, we were bad. It was saving her from her, I guess.
It's also very sad though, as a mom now. It is so
really
sad.
Because
they probably would have been really good parents without that in there, right? That's how I think. And it's really sad to see how many people just said, let's have these kids, and had all the expectations to be great parents. And then slowly were stripped away of, the bond that you would have. I mean, for me, I know that my mom kind of, I guess in some ways, was rebelling because she kind of took a step back from Scientology when she had kids. She had 4 kids, so it's kind of hard to, not. But her whole thing was she'd always say, my kids are more important. And when I was a kid, I just was like, oh, it's just my mom. She's just, an overbearing mom. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, shit, you were saying kind of like F you to the church in that sense, because I don't need to be on staff. I don't need to be doing courses every night. This is the most important job I will ever do. And that's what she would say. And so now as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's why you were always fighting like my parents were always fighting, because she didn't want to give up being a mom. She was not willing to. So that was her little way of rebelling against the church and the cruddy Dianetics crap that's just so, it's complete opposite of what is healthy and what is good for a good, healthy environment for kids to thrive. And it's really sad when you look at that, because like our parents' life was either they were praised in the church and then had a crappy or not as good relationship with their kids, or they got crap from the church and tried to be a parent. Either way, you're going to get, in some trouble or have something that isn't what it should be in your life. And that's so, so sad. And I was reminded of so many things when you had talked about the like child Dianetics and stuff, because I never really read it because I really hated Scientology and rebelled against it. And when you were talking about it, it just made so many things in my head make sense. I was like, oh my gosh, that's why my mom would think this. That's why my mom would say that. Because she would say all kinds of stuff like, I knew you didn't like me from when you were an infant, when you were born, because you wouldn't breastfeed. And I'm like a teenager, like, what? Do I hate you? Is this what's going on here? Like, but she was convinced that because I rejected her milk, that, I just must have hated her from birth. And I'm like, where would you, how do you come up with that? And then you read the child Dianetics kind of stuff and you're like, oh, that's where you get this nutty stuff that makes absolutely no sense. And the amount of pressure on a mom is astronomical already. And then you add in this, and it's such a very sad thing. And it's really disgusting, because how much pressure do you have already on yourself that you just put on yourself for society? You're a mom, you have to do that all, you have to cook, you have to clean, you have to take care of the kids or the house and all that kind of stuff. And then the Dianetics is just adding on top of that, and also separating the bond that you naturally would and should have with your kids. So
It's
horrible.
so much. Yeah.
It's horrible.
It's awful. Do you guys remember contact assists?
Oh,
When you
yeah.
were, little?
So creepy.
Hated contact assist.
That's
I
just so
actually
creepy.
rebelled. I wouldn't, at a certain age, I was like,
Don't
I'm
touch
not
me.
doing that anymore.
Yeah, that's
My
creepy.
mom always did the where did it happen? Where are you now? And I guess it was satisfactory when I was like, shut up, I don't want to do this anymore. She's like, cool. Like, you snapped out of it, because you were going from grief to anger. So you went up tone.
Going up.
Yeah.
Going on up.
Yeah. But the other thing is that, for me, I had, my children are typically, they're typically developing children. I think that if you have children that have, any type of special needs or developmental needs or, medical concerns, that's a whole nother layer of guilt and in Scientology. I mean, probably also just in life, as a mom, you go through so much and the hormones are just insane. Even, I have friends whose babies rejected the breast, and Scientology aside, it is a sad thing to work through, especially when you have, all this milk and hormones, and you're really vulnerable in that moment. You're vulnerable to have people around you who have positive help and who have an actual idea of what really might be going on. Hey, they might just need to latch differently, or there's other things that it's okay. It doesn't mean that your child hates you. That's really extreme and horrible, because there's no way to keep having a relationship with a kid without that popping up somehow.
And not only is it just horrible on the moms, there's that extra layer, but we all witnessed children who were born with disability, gift, autism spectrum, all types of different things that today we know how to support for ideal development. And honestly, at the time, there was a lot of good research. So that's what makes me mad, is because these children suffered unduly. Our parents thought they were really doing the right thing. They had the wrong manual, But for the kids who had the developmental issues or the gifts like Philip,
Mhm.
right? It really put them in it creates such a horrible environment
Mhm.
on an extra level, not just the cult level, but a really like your needs are not being met. And it's
Yeah.
really sad, you know?
Yeah. That's why that age appropriateness, that concept of like applying something that is for their age, and their development level for kids, that was really new to me. That was one of the most basic concepts I was introduced to in community college. Um, and that always stuck out as a huge part of realizing what went wrong, you know? Like, I don't think it's my kid is 8 right now. He would not survive at boarding school. I mean, he would survive, but he would not thrive, you know? And it's really sad to me to think about applying the adults in little bodies to little bodies.
It's just so incorrect. It goes
Yeah.
against everything they know about developmental theories. So the
Mhm.
fact that L. Ron Hubbard told our parents that we're just like ancient beings in tiny bodies and that they direct us to be the adults and make the adult choices.
Right.
Like, I, like you, got into a debt at 15 years of age because I had to go to
Mhm.
Hubbard College because I wasn't allowed to just be out roaming, right? My
Mhm.
outside grandparents were worried. So there had to be a solution. And so
Right.
I was sold on Hubbard College. So I took a loan,
Mm.
which was a horrible choice. But even until I was, 30, I took personal responsibility for taking that loan. Like it was my choice. No, I was actually a child. I was
Yeah.
under 18, right? But
Mhm.
until you can get that education and inform yourself, you can't even see some of the things that were done to you or
Right.
done in your life. And it's a challenge, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, I have so much compassion. I'm so proud of first generation ex-Scientologists who come out and say, "Hey, I really fucked up. I thought I was doing the right thing. I did the wrong thing. Let me try to let's, like, make it up," or whatever words they say. What concerns me deeply are the ones that double down on it. And then you have another generation coming in and they are not changing that narrative. They're still pushing that same narrative. And that's where my red flags come up and I say, "Danger, danger. So sorry, but you cannot have a relationship with your grandchildren." And that is horrible. I don't want to deprive that from anybody. But, to continue to double down on that same message shows that there hasn't been a change. Nothing's changed. So you
Yeah.
can't do it again.
You don't want to pass that on to your kids either.
Yeah.
And you knowing and living it, that was quite enough.
Right.
You don't want to perpetuate that onto your kids and have them grow up and have to work through all the stuff that you've had to.
No.
And that we'll have to work through this probably for the rest of our lives. That's something that I always tell people. Like, it's not just like read a couple books, go to therapy a couple times, and then you're like healed, you're better, you're not traumatized. It's learning to live with whatever your trauma was, working through it, and continuing to empower and better yourself so that you can live your best life. You can be the best mother, you can be the best wife, partner, employee, human, friend, sister, cousin, aunt, whatever it is, because we lose so much when we speak out, but we also gain like our freaking voice, we gain our freedom, and then we're free to learn. We're free to connect with others. And so it doesn't feel so isolating, right? Like my mom saying stuff like that was like, why would you say that? And like, that's something that I heard my whole life.
Right.
So imagine hearing, "Oh, you always hated me. Oh, you always hated me." And then you're like, do I need to, like, I don't understand this. Like, that's not normal. But for us, it was normal.
Right.
But when you hear that other people had similar experiences, that their parents similarly parented and raised us, it makes it not as it's still strange, don't get me wrong, but it does give us a little less of that isolation bubble that is really hard. And that's another mental health thing that's just so unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to add to, not wanting to be alive in that sense, right? Because that's another thing that you can kind of check off the list when you're like, oh, no one cares. No one understands. It just happened to me. I pulled it in, which is such crap.
Right.
Such crap. I hate that. I will never agree with that. Ever, 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 ever. And it's used against people in such insidious and hideous ways. And it's
Right.
just not appropriate in any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
I really applaud you for doing so much work and for raising your kids so different. I know how hard that is because I was the first one to have kids in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had like all these barriers up that I don't think other people could understand. And they'd be like, oh, your parents must be so happy. And I'd be like, yeah, probably. But I'm also like very much I'll do it all myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take any risks. I don't want for their childhood to be like confusing and like
Mm-hmm.
them have to recover from. I mean,
Mhm.
I know we'll make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. We're not
course.
perfect. I
Yeah.
know that we'll make our own new mistakes, right? But I'm not going to put that on them because
Right.
that's such a big and heavy and lifelong baggage of crap to carry around. And
Yeah.
I don't want that at all.
Yeah.
And clearly you don't either. So
I was going to add to
Awesome.
both of your points as a only dog mother, but I developmentally, because I garden a lot, and developmentally, if the seeds and the growth phase in the very beginning, when it's in the vegetation and it's getting strong, if you're not building healthy roots from the beginning, it affects the plant's entire life, right?
Yeah.
So if we're aware of what happened, we can manage better other things. Just like you said, it's not like ever going to go away, but it's not a damper. It's just when we can learn about what happened during our developmental process, so key because it can explain behaviors that we don't even understand. We can theoretically understand it. Like
Mhm.
I love to intellectualize about why things happen and
Yeah.
philosophize. But that being said, sometimes things we're doing we don't understand and we want to
Yeah.
stop. And that's kind of the whole point of Scientology in the first place. Great, like getting that reactive mind out of there. But sometimes I act in ways I'm not quite sure. And then I learn, oh, wow, at this developmental phase, I didn't get that need met. So I'm
Right.
still, puffing an egg or whatever, because that had to do with a mouth thing. Like it's very easy to understand once you read it and has nothing to do with a crazy redheaded man's ramblings who had
Right.
multiple wives and who his son also died by unaliving himself.
Right.
And
Tragically.
also is quoted as saying that man ruined his life. Like
Right.
L. Ron Hubbard Jr. has said that.
Mhm.
So the fact that our parents still, and Liz, you and I both, Alicia's mom unfortunately passed away. Our moms are both passed away to us, but alive. And that's
Mhm.
also hard to live with. And I've watched Liz's journey and struggle with that because disconnection doesn't help anybody. And
Mhm.
everybody is suffering. It's your parents, it's my parents, and it's us, and it's your
Mhm.
children. It's my dogs who don't get to go see their grandma on Sunday
Mhm.
morning for a treat. And it doesn't help anybody. So, like, I think it's powerful that we're linking, we're like using our voices, we're not alone. Because they want us to suffer alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I was told all kinds of things about what would happen if I left.
Yeah.
That I would never survive, that I, would all the things that they knew were wrong with me. Because I have mental health struggles. I have attachment issues. I got problems. I'm definitely
To
not
be
not over here.
expected, though. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and it's fine. I'm cope. I cope. I educate myself. I'm a human. The human condition is rough,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just is what it is. And I'm okay with all that, but I have to be honest that I was the one who actually disconnected from my parents.
Good for
Good for
you.
you.
Good for you.
my stepdad had some issues health-wise, and after he kind of recovered a little bit and he was moving on with his health, first of all, I was the who, because there was a couple of incidents that, of course, me being the closest one to call for help, I became the common denominator. My stepdad actually never officially disconnected from me. He just changed his number, and I haven't talked to him. But the pressure was really on. He said to me, I need Scientology or I'm going to die. Don't fuck this up for me. And, same kind of thing with my mom. So I really did. I wrote them a very Scientology's letter. And I said, here, take this to OSA. You can tell them that, you don't have an antagonistic daughter anymore. And I didn't hear from them again. I think about maybe 5 years ago, I said like, happy birthday. And she said, thank you. And then I did message a few other times. There were, I don't know. You know how it goes. Like, sometimes you're so sure about your decisions, and then other times you think, what if I fucked it all up? What if I'm the problem?
Well, it feels like it's your choice, but it's really not. And then you get time away from it and you realize you were in a double bind either way. And then also what you said about the mental health concerns, they tell you that basically you're going to end up homeless, psychotic. You're going to be really damaged mental health wise. And then like you mentioned, in the back of our mind, not only are we pretty terrified of psychiatry, psychologists, therapists at that moment when you're just leaving because it's been ingrained. So as a second gen, you get out, you're not thinking, oh, I need therapy. No, that's going to be years down the road if you don't have a mental health crisis immediately. And typically what ends up happening, Scientology induced like the environment for your genetics to have that mental health crisis. So it does happen. And you're thinking, oh my God, they were right. And then you're thinking, I can't go to the hospital. I can't even get help. They're going to come get me. I signed the contract. It's a really dark place to be. And it's something that is just so sad. And it's why I always, and Elysia, we agree, it's the dangerous time when you're waking up and you're realizing everything was a lie and that your parents are really choosing this. It's not a real, it's not fake. Their love was conditional, and it's a really dark time.
Yeah, really, really dark. I mean, for me, a lot of the things that I was told would happen did happen. I was essentially homeless for about a year. I did have some mental health crisis. I should have probably got intervention at the time. I didn't really. So I kind of suffered through them. But I will say that having a specifically second generation support system saved my life, because as we know, Scientology's cults in general, they have their own language, and it makes it extremely difficult to explain what happened to you to the average person. So I would try and tell one story about something that happened, and I would end up an hour of just educating somebody about what it meant and what I'm talking about, and then their looks of horror of like, what the hell?
They can't laugh about it and make dark jokes like we all do.
Not like us.
Right,
it's our coping mechanism.
Exactly.
That's how we cope.
And that was something that I really wish that, my brother had for sure. I think obviously the internet, social media, that's one of the positive things that has come from it for me. So that whole time that I was, I don't know how to explain it other than I just fell apart. I just fell apart. Nothing, I think there was 2 years there where I didn't feel joy.
You were never taught coping skills. You were set up for failure. You had no education. You had no support. There was no career path for Liz. This was not a concern. So of course, it's just so hard because they say that's going to happen. and then it happens and we
Yeah.
think it's our fault. And
Right.
it's not, because developmentally, love-wise, professionally, I mean, I was working at Scientology companies, and that
Right.
was how I afforded taking
Yep.
care of myself and my
Mhm.
rent and my dogs. And
Yep.
so how, it's just so sad to hear you say that happened, because it happens to everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I worked for my stepdad. I did web design at that point. So I feel like it took a good like 8 years to get out into a position where I could finally say, I'm done. And even after that, they did everything they could to take away, I was told basically, you reject Scientology, you're rejecting your family's heritage. We were evicted. Um, my relationship with my husband pretty much fell apart because I just was like a shell of a human being. I was having panic attacks. All of that to say that you can still feel better. Like it might not be perfect, and this might be something that I'm sure going to be dealing with my whole life. Some of these things that happened in early childhood are going to stick with me, and I'm okay with that. Um, But in those darkest, darkest, darkest moments, to be frank, if my brother had not unalived himself, and I had some protective factors in play. I was a parent. I had also been on the other side of somebody committing suicide, and I just could not do that to somebody that I loved because it just hurt too much. And I don't know, I just couldn't do that. So I kind of push through. I will say about myself is that I'm a resilient motherfucker. That is the truth. Of the fight
Damn
or
right.
flight, I'm a fighter. And now that it's been a good 5 years, I still have a lot of that pain. I still have loss. I still have sadness. I still even question some of my decisions. But I have solace in the fact that I've come a long way. And so I guess it's important to me that, like, if anybody else is out there that might be watching this who is thinking about leaving Scientology in particular, and I guess I'm going to speak very specifically to second and third and fourth generation Scientologists, like, you're going to go through some shit and it is going to hurt. But what's on the other side, I promise you, is going to be better than what it is right now, because there's nothing worth your voice, your safety, your future. And, hard things are hard. Things that change us, changing, growing, that growing pains are a real thing. But there is a huge support system out there. And I don't know, I'm sure every one of you get that call every once in a while, maybe from a stranger who's like, we
Not
need to
every
talk.
once in a while. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
exactly, right?
often. And I have
Often.
to tell you, half of our viewership is not like, half of our views are being watched by people who are too afraid to even like, comment, or subscribe, because we know who our audience is, because we were that audience and we were
Yeah.
too afraid. And we didn't even have the idea, like, let me create a fake account so that I can watch these. Or I did, but I thought in my head they were so powerful. Maybe they're reading my freaking, internet
Right.
connection, and they're going to know that I'm supporting a psych, and I just can't lose my mom right now,
Right.
because you're so emotionally, like, you're already working so hard because you weren't set up. So you're trying to just not lose anything. Right. But I didn't also know a mood is a mood, and a mood passes.
Right.
And so the shit you're going to go through, it's a mood. It's not permanent.
Right.
And dropping your body is not a solution, because we don't know what happens in the afterlife. Actually, nobody does. No religion, no writer, no guru, nobody does, because nobody's ever sent a letter. So what we got to do is try to live every day like we don't know what's going to happen, and cherish those around us who we love, right? Because that belief system that you can just drop your body and pick up a new one is so very, 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 very borderline on a unaliving cult.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
It's
And
why
it works.
we know so many people, right? It's not
Right.
that big of a deal. It's just one lifetime.
Right. Well, and I think back to Paulette Cooper, right? So maybe everybody watching knows Paulette Cooper was one of the original journalists who wrote a book, The Scandal of Scientology, I think it was called, and they went after her so hardcore, framed her for like bomb threats. Nobody believed her too, because this was pre-internet. You know, she was one of the people who exposed that Scientology does this. They had planted a friend in her home whose job was to try to get her to commit suicide so she would go away. And that stuck out to me so much, because then I realized that's kind of part of the end game, like for critics on their end. And so if you don't want them to win, then stick
That's the
around.
darkest
Stay alive.
fair
Yeah.
game I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's a good one. It's a good one. Just
So,
keep living and keep speaking.
yeah.
Don't
Well,
be
that's
silent.
why I did. I mean, I was
Right.
straight up like, if I do this right now, because I'm suffering bad, and you're not thinking clearly. You're not even sometimes able to think of the people around you because you're so depressed and your brain is offline and you're just seeing darkness, right? But if you can just keep it together, remember it's a mood. It's a mood. And we're so isolated because nobody understands our weird lingo, right? So there are others out here. That's the purpose of us having this conversation. We know you don't even have to talk to us. You don't have to tell us you like it. We're going to keep going, but we want you to feel less alone, because we're having these conversations. Right?
And doing so publicly is the only way that we can prove, in my opinion, to other second gen and people who are out that we're safe. Because if we're just talking quietly, it's a risk. The risk is real. Who you talk to is real. And we deem ourselves safe by publicly saying, hey, we're against Scientology. And so, you know, they also say, I don't know who says this, but like, for me, like I said, I didn't feel joy for a really long time. Helping others was one of the first things that made me feel like maybe there was some good in me or in the world. Gardening, actually, also. But, you know, the TikTok thing or like speaking out, I tend to have a little bit of a different approach. I kind of joke. I like a lot of the absurdity. But I want the message to get out there that, like, how do I explain this? Not to normalize, but just say, hey, we can talk about this. Like we can talk about the hard things. And that's one of the really great things I find about TikTok in general. There's a lot of healing videos. There's a lot of like cults and, you know, trauma ex Mormons. There's like a really big community over there that I've gotten to tap into. And I think it is helpful for people who are very alone, thinking you're alone, to understand that you're not really alone. The powers in your life might want you to feel that way, because once you realize the actual community out here, you will be so empowered and realize that you have so much backing that that's dangerous for them. That's dangerous for whatever cult or high control group or even high control relationship that you're leaving. So that's really important to me, as well as I wish that more people, like, I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so proud. I really wanted to be on here just to support you guys and just be like a part of the team.
You're a degraded daughter with us, and we love it.
I
We love it.
And this, I think, is so important too, because, well, for so many reasons that I just said, but just knowing that you could just chat with people. It doesn't have to be like this huge thing. It doesn't have to be this big tell-all and it's going to ruin your life. If you, like, there are people that can just listen and can just talk to you. So if anybody out there is thinking about leaving, keep in mind too, I think there's going to be a tipping point soon, because I think more people who are quote Scientologists are pretending so they don't lose somebody.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Definitely.
For me, that's a big thing. I have a lot of compassion for people who are under the radar, but I also have to say, What are you waiting for? You know what? Yeah, it's going to hurt. Life's hard. And the hardest things we do often have the most profound results. So I would just challenge people out there to think about how much better you might feel if you could speak your truth.
Yeah.
So.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you for making that beautiful, beautiful point and sharing that with us. And I wanted to say that your video we have a theme of connection today, and I love that. Like second gens unite, and any exes, you don't have to be second gen, but because we do accept everybody who's been through every cultic situation in general, or just abusive relationships and abusive traumas and all of that. But your theme of connection is fascinating, because that video you ended up getting all those views on was about the article on BuzzFeed that was specifically, still don't know who wrote it, but there was an article that appeared on BuzzFeed about 8 years ago. And it was like, you are a second generation Scientologist when ... And it was incredible, because it was our experience, and I'd never seen anything like that. It was like these funny things about like, you're a second gen because you can, pound a handful of vitamins, or like like horse pill style vitamins, or whatever it was. It spoke so deeply. I felt so understood, and I was still trying at the time to explain to my dad like how I was feeling. I thought he was going to be able to understand, and he ultimately wasn't. He told me the same thing, basically, like, I'm going to be a Scientologist for the rest of my life. So come with me or don't, but get out of my way and don't ruin this for me. So, but I had sent that article because it had spoke so deeply to me. So then it was and he didn't get it. Like, he didn't think it was cool. And that I get it. The last part was like, and now you finally know there's a better life out there, or something that was a little anti, right? So I knew he wasn't gonna love it, but just sharing those experiences and those special moments of the cow mag we love, or the whatever, we can honor our little culture in the ways, or whatever. Maybe we go to a sauna here and there. But it's important that we're all like talking about it and then sharing it. And you're so brilliant with everything you've said about developmental and like the way that you're raising your children now. It's so brave.
I appreciate that. I don't know if it's so much out of bravery as just necessity.
I totally get that.
Both. It's both, though. It's brave to do it because you kind of don't have a tribe behind you. You don't have that help that you have seen maybe friends or other family members have, which has always been kind of like even more isolating, right? Like this great time in your life, and you're like, oh, I don't want them too close. Like love them, but from afar, and don't say too much, and put those Way to Happiness pamphlets away, and hide your library of Scientology books. And it's just like,
well, and it's embarrassing sometimes now to have to admit in your life that your mom's not there and why, or your dad's not there and why. And you see other people spending holidays, and their whole lives, they think they're family for everything, right? And then it's so unnatural for families to not even be able to be together when there wasn't even really anything. It was just a made up.
It was the illusion that we kept in our head to keep us
the
going.
Scientology technology inserted into the family, and had it not been there, it would have been an interesting, different experience. But that was what we all had to deal with, and so it's just sad, and like to see you go through it with strength, grace. We know it hurts. It hurts really bad. But we can honor the people who helped us make these choices. And I think that's a great time to bring out our special guests that we have today. So we have special guests that we wanted to introduce.
Can I introduce you guys to this is my brother. Oh, he's gonna come out.
Oh no.
Don't tell him.
He really wants to make an appearance.
Philip, you're a legend, buddy. We cherish
Yeah.
you and Evelyn Hoy up there, right? Yes, Alicia's mommy.
I don't know what to do with it yet, so I haven't gotten a vase or anything, but I just travel with her now. So I'm like, road trips are not over, dude. You're going from beyond the grave.
Aw.
Like, she didn't want me to take her ashes, so
Well, they're here, and they're
whatever.
our spirits guiding
Right.
us on this lovely journey. And thank you both for being here, Evelyn, Philip. Your
All of the
memory
others.
So morbid.
I know, but like, dude,
But
they're
that's-
guiding us. Like,
that's how we-
we're
yeah.
literally living YOLO because of them. And
Yeah.
I think that was their point in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, if they knew it or not.
Right.
And you are writing a book, right, Liz?
I am. I've actually written my book, and it is currently at the editor. It should be out this summer, available on Amazon. It is
wow.
called Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Pothead.
Oh
So
my God.
that's me.
That's going to speak to a lot of
That's awesome.
Yeah.
people.
Well,
Oh, I'm so
and
excited.
I'm lucky enough to live in Oregon, so cannabis
Mhm.
is part of our culture here.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot like my TikTok, it's broken down into confessions, and it's a little scandalous. It will be adults only. If you are a child, please do not purchase this book or read this book. But true to form, to me, it's funny, it's heartbreaking, it's real, and I hope people will enjoy it and kind of be very entertained, but also learn something. So.
Right.
Oh, I'm
We'll
sure
see.
they will. I'm sure they will. We just started a book club.
I
and
was just
we're
gonna ask.
doing Catherine's book first. Catherine Spolino, the Bad
Yeah,
Cadet. So
Bad
we're
Cadet.
going to meet and have a live with her to discuss with the book club participants
Love
afterwards.
that.
So that would be really fun to do with your
Can
book.
we have you back after your book
Sure.
releases to
Absolutely.
do? Oh, that's gonna be so fun.
Absolutely.
This
When
is so
are you
fun.
expecting it? Are you still writing it? Are you editing? Are we?
It is getting formatted now. I definitely am pushing for a summer release. It might be July, maybe beginning of August.
Oh my gosh.
So pretty soon.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I was just looking at cover design is almost finished. So I'm excited about it. However, I have to admit, I'm scared shitless. Because, well, for a few reasons. One, because it is really authentic, and it is one of the first things. I don't know. It's one thing to be on TikTok and kind of talk about whatever, but it's another thing, I think, to really. I talk about my brother. I talk about my childhood. I talk about just some kind of harder things, and so. My promise to myself after leaving Scientology, because I didn't know who I was. My entire identity was just gone.
Yeah.
And but I've always wanted to be a writer. And that was something beyond Scientology, beyond my parents, that, so in therapy and counseling, trying to figure out your core beliefs after rejecting so many things. For years, I knew who I wasn't, who I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And it's really a different approach to figure out who you do want to be and what
So
you do
empowering.
stand for.
Yeah.
So for me, it's being authentic and being artistic. Those were the two things that I thought, if I lay my head down to die, and I've been striving to be authentic and striving to, because I'm a creative person, that's just the drive that I have, I'll feel like a life worth living. Right?
Yeah.
Aside from all the parenting, aside from all that other stuff,
Yeah.
just me as a human
Mhm.
being. So this book is my version of that. And so, it's scary to sort of, just like any artist, to create a masterpiece and think, okay, this is good enough to share with the world and to put it out there.
Yeah.
I'm also a little bit nervous about Scientology. I don't know how to explain it. They can't shut me up.
Yeah.
They just can't.
Yeah.
They can't stop any of us from talking. And
No.
the luxury of being a second generation Scientologist is, the general perception is, we were born into this. We have a right to speak about our lives.
Yeah.
However, I fought so hard for the right just to say what happened,
I know.
there's still a part of me that's working through that.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
sitting down to write about things like, you know, my brother told me top secret Scientology things before he died. Or, you know, the guy I lost my virginity to, he committed suicide. And some of the stuff that, you know, happened in that. It's just a lot. It's become
Yeah.
very vulnerable.
Super vulnerable.
So I'm hoping that the world doesn't like eat me alive.
They
We'll
won't.
see.
They
I don't
won't.
think so. I think
No.
you doing it out loud. I was scared too when I first started publicly sharing
Right.
because I felt like, oh my God, everyone's going to judge me for this and look at me in this different lens, and people are gonna be like, why are you talking about that? You're an adult. You're not a kid anymore. Let it go. Leave it alone. Whatever. But then you're sitting there thinking, how many people don't even get to the point of getting through it, past it, and even thinking about being able to speak? And how much of an injustice is it to not share your input and your story because you're scared? But other people, it could be like a life or death situation where they don't get to even have the opportunity because they're not alive anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's so hard to take off the lens of and Elysia and I talked about this when we were discussing launching our channel. We were very second gens are kind of like bullies to each other in the way that we learned, not like outside. I don't mean like in our community now, but I mean like the way we were learned was very judgmental. We were always judging people's tone. We were always doing this. So a lot of stress and anxiety, I realized, was coming from my opinions of how the second gen community was going to see me or something like that. And that's not the real world, and or how the Scientology community was going to see me. And that's also not the real world. And then you expose it and you're vulnerable, and then people's support shows up, like, as you know, like times a million. And you just realize that, like, as we grow, we start shedding these glasses that aren't serving us, and they're creating more pain and suffering. So I totally know what you're explaining, and it's a challenge, but you're being so vulnerable, so strong, and holy moly, I cannot wait to read your book.
Excited. So excited.
I'll make sure I'll send you guys copies.
Oh my gosh.
That's going to be so fun. I'm really excited that you're writing a book. I think if anybody is thinking about writing a book, dude, go for it. Go for it.
Yep.
The more stories, the better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I also have a novel that I'm going to put out. My goal was before my birthday. I turned 40 this year, and I'm like, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm 40 now.
For sure.
I wrote a novel I've been writing for the past 5 years, and it's different. It's about a woman in the 50s who joins a cult to save her husband because she believes her husband is a pedophile. Which is frankly what I think happened in my family. I don't have any real proof of that, but it was me kind of trying to work through it. It's not about Scientology. It's about a different cult. It's more a story of a woman, a mother, and her journey. But that will also be out at sort of the end of the year. So I'm a multifaceted individual.
What a creative way to work through your trauma. That's incredible. Like, that's a creative, empowering, artistic. Yeah, that's incredible. Wow.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to say that I'm finally getting some ownership of I don't know, of the stories and of the fact that I can be feeling joy and laughter and yet also hold space for really dark, traumatic things. And it took me a really long time to kind of get to that place where it's like, well, I own that experience. I can feel however I want, and I can express whatever I want to because that's what I went through. So I feel like that's kind of a level up a little bit. Same thing with, you know, the cannabis. Like, I am pro cannabis, not just as recreational or medically using, like hemp. I believe I had a hemp farm for a while. the fiber, the seeds, like it cleans the soil. There's just so many things. And that was something that I was kind of embarrassed about for a long time. Like, people are going to think I'm some, pothead, some dumb pothead. And I'm like, well, you know what?
Yeah. Scientology
Surprise.
does shame that. Scientology does have a lot of
My
shame in
dad
that.
told
Exactly.
me to put the bong down and the Scientology would start making more sense.
Ooh, yep.
I was
Yep.
like, wait, this is the only thing that is making me not unalive myself right now. Are you serious? Because I can't handle all this freaking gaslighting and the magazine of propaganda you just sent. But okay, yeah, I think it's the pot. But that's really empowering, and I love your title because of it. I get it. It's kind of like the Degraded Daughters.
It's so
Yes,
cheeky.
exactly.
I love it.
It's a little button for people. So
Exactly.
it's like taking that trigger and
Yep.
and hitting fire.
Exactly.
Bam, bam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love it.
congratulations. We can't
Thanks.
wait to see your books and read them.
you.
And thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for such a lovely chat. You're such a cool chick. So we
feel the
appreciate you.
same.
And you've got the best hair. I know I said that off camera, but I'm saying it on camera. Your hair is amazing. So
Thank
just
you.
FYI, everybody
Yeah,
out there.
Liz's
Liz's
hair
hair.
should have a channel.
It should. It's amazing.
My hair is actually turning white. My hairdresser calls it glitter, but one of these days I'm gonna pop on here and it's gonna be
I can't even tell.
Yeah.
thanks.
Beautiful.
And even if it is, so what? It's
I'm
beautiful. It's
embracing it.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice blessing that we're still all alive. That's kind of how I look at my life. I'm like, we're alive. We get to learn more. I know that sounds
It
horrible.
instantly gets so dark. She's like, I mean, we're alive, so
Well-
a little gray hair is nothing, right?
Honestly,
But it's true.
I've earned this gray
Yes.
hair.
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh,
like,
yes.
That's kind of one of the ways that I'm looking at. Like, I've
Mhm.
earned these wrinkles. I've earned this
Absolutely.
because, even in my book, people are probably going to cringe when they read it. But I'm like, I end one of my chapters with like, well, Phil, who's alive now?
Oh my gosh!
I kind of love it already.
So
Oh, this is going to be perfect for us.
I cannot wait.
I'm really excited for this. And I'm so happy that you're like sharing this and healing out loud. That's when I first started sharing my own stuff on Facebook. I called it Healing Out Loud. And I just did like a little journal entry every single day. And I was like, you're not going to silence me. But I waited until my mom died because that was like, I had to wait for her because she didn't want to say anything because she had issues, but she didn't want to rock the boat with the family and have kids disconnect from her. And I was like, no, you should tell him. But she wouldn't. So now I'm like, whatever. What do I have to lose? I don't want to die with regrets.
Well, I will say that I'm still there. I'm still keeping some stuff that when some people are gone off of this earth, I will have around too.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot off of us when,
But like your
legally.
volcano your volcano is still exploding like fire lava that's gonna spray everywhere. So we really appreciate that.
We love the DBs flying out, babe. We love it.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so proud of you guys. I have been watching your channels and I would love to say I'm binging it, but to be honest, sometimes I am so moved by some of your content that I've paused, the disconnections video from Mother's Day that you guys had. And I love the guests that you've had so far. I just think such a really special, you guys are really cultivating something really special here. And I'm honored.
Thank you for being
so much.
You're so important and your story is so important. And you were such a lovely chat. This was so fun and easy. I love this. I'm like, oh, these people are so easy. I'm like, if I knew this community was here 10 years ago, I would have started talking. Not that I was ever quiet. I just wasn't public. My whole family within that knew I didn't like Scientology, but you kind of toe the line and kind of be quiet publicly so that you can keep these relationships. And so it's nice to know how many cool people there are on the other side. So if you're watching and listening, there are so many cool people, no matter if you're dark and a little morbid like us and you carry ashes of your family members or, you're into just gardening and dogs and there's so many people that have such cool interests and there's a lot of really caring, loving people.
And I think you're describing too post-traumatic growth because there's post-traumatic stress disorder, but then there's also post-traumatic growth, and that happens when you go through something really hard, and then you are able to perform even at a higher level because you went through that, and like understand things in even different ways and have skills that other people can't have. So like you guys everybody's displaying that. And it does happen after you get through the really, really, really horrible part. So just like keep it
hang
up.
on. Hang on. If it's bad.
And reach out. Reach out. If I can say just
we
one
respond.
More...
If you guys DM us or email us, we totally respond, and Liz will respond.
I respond to everybody who reaches out to me. I always make a point to reach out back. And I just want to say one more thing to anybody under the radar watching that and I don't, it's going to come across however it comes across. It's so common that when we were in the cult, that all of us did things we weren't proud of. All of us did things to other people in the name of Scientology that we are not proud of. Please never, ever, ever let that stop you from coming out and sharing your story. On the other side, you will find compassion, you will find understanding, and there's an entire science and world dedicated to understanding that you are not a suppressive person. You are not an evil person. We all had to do whatever we had to do to survive, and we're proud of you for surviving. I am proud of you for getting this far. So I just wanted to
Hell yeah. We second that.
Bumps, Liz.
Yeah.
It's really well spoken. I love that.
Good job.
Thank you so much for hanging with us.
Thanks,
this was so much fun. And we can't wait to read your book.
Yeah.
I will send it to you.
I'm really excited.
All right. Let's say bye to our audience. Bye, audience.
Bye.
Let's hang out for a second.
Okay.
You girls watch out for those DBs.
We are the DBs, mister.